Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to see you and be with you. Before I even jump in, I just have to express my thanks. I didn't know what this evening would hold for me personally. I know that everywhere I show up, it's an intentional moment. It's a little thing between God and me. It's a Him thing, and I'm always meant to hear, see, feel, meet someone, learn something. And tonight, my cup is full. It runs over because of the stories that you share tonight. Your courage, your innovation, your ambition, your boldness to just climb out of that Netflix show hole and do something meaningful in the world. And that show hole is important. It's therapy too, don't get me wrong. However, um, there is a big, crazy world out there, and it requires of us to get some things done to make it better. So thank you for allowing me to be humble with you in that moment and filling my cup tonight. So, my team and I have the pleasure, the honor really, of raising friends and support for this special place that you've been a part of all day today. And the incredible learners, mavericks, pioneers that are within it, many of whom you met earlier today that you spent your whole day with. Um, and before I share with you a bold idea that we've been experimenting with for some time and all the lessons that we've learned and what it means for us and potentially for you, I want to kick off by taking a quick moment to just brag about someone special to us all and to you who has helped inspire and shape this work as much as any adult that's been a part of the team that's put it together. And that individual is Anya. So you know Anya, you spent the whole day with her, you know her well. You know that Anya is a learner. She actually used to be a Mount Vernon student. Many of you met her for the first time when she was still here. And you must know from hearing from her today that she's a recent graduate. Congratulations, Anya. But more than that, what impresses me most about Anya is that she is a change maker. If you spend any time with her at all, you already know that she is incredibly capable of making a huge impact on our world, and she's already gotten started. And what excites me as her colleague in this mission, if you will, is that it's not just Anya. It's not just Skylar, who you heard from earlier today. She's in the audience. It's not just Megan, who I'm sure facilitated some of your sessions or will tomorrow. It's all Mount Vernon students. It's all Mount Vernon students. We believe truly can and do incredibly impactful work to design a better world with us right now. It's pretty amazing. In fact, it's humbling. Because here at Mount Vernon, we don't just subscribe to we're preparing these future problem solvers. We believe that students today are the change makers today. And in addition to changing the world and making it better, you know what they're helping us do in the meantime? Rethink what school is and what it does. I mean, if this is the place that gets them started on their journey, then perhaps we should function, we should look, we should feel different, right? And as a part of being different as a school in terms of what we do and how we function, they're also helping us just rethink and question our business model as a school. And that's kind of where I come into the story. So let me back up for a moment and just talk about this journey to redefine what school is and what it does started for us many moons ago. And really with this document that you see. This is Mount Vernon Continuum. You've seen it before. It's our guiding document. It's our true north. Symbolized by the Mobius strip, it really represents all that we pour in, all of the learning principles and practices, the habits of mind, the cultural norms that we feel are required of us, really, by two things. One, our mission as a school of inquiry, innovation, and impact. But it's also required of us by our vision to become ultimately a destination for anyone who wants to design a better world, for anyone who wants to design a better world. But what I also hope you realize it shows is that we insist on putting Anya, Skylar, Megan, all of our students right at the center of that continuum. That we are very intentional about setting the conditions for their deep learning. Because again, we challenge this assumption that we are rearing them to solve complicated world problems in the future. They can do it right now. And so we have to set the conditions. So, speaking of deep learning, you also know about us that deep design thinking is a core part of everything that we do here. You'd be hard pressed to have any conversation with anyone from this school family and not be challenged by them to design think your way through a problem. But it's such a core part of our entire curriculum, our entire business function. Whether you're a leader here, part of our faculty or staff, or you're a student, it's just what we do. We share it with everyone. And so this question sometimes comes up about why that thing? And it's the truth that Trey spoke to earlier today that we all know. The world is a crazy, complicated, volatile, unpredictable, interesting, complex place. And for sure, we know that it's just riddled with problems. You've heard our amazing nonprofit partners today talk about just a few of them, and that's the tip of the iceberg, right? And so we have a shot, moonshot or not, to solve some of these problems. And it just requires something different of us if we're going to do that. We have to think differently. So for us, this begged this question as a school in terms of, all right, there's a real world out there. We've got some real problems we need to solve. We need kids working on it right now alongside of us. It begged this question of how might we blur the lines between school and real life? And part of how we started to answer that was in creating the innovation diploma 3 years ago. And y'all, this is kind of cool to me anyway. The innovation diploma is us giving ourselves permission to have a test kitchen where we can real life prototype real world learning experiences alongside of our students. It's pretty bold for a school. That's not how I grew up. Test kitchen, prototyping ideas, and with our teachers, like as a student, I wasn't given that much shine. It was like, whatever, you show up and you learn from us. We're the experts, you're not. But I love that Mount Vernon was a school that could commit to that. And part of why it's meaningful to bring up today is because, well, one, this is where our friend Anya enters the scene. She was one of the first of our iDiploma cohort members, but it's also the place where this bold idea originated, this concept of design briefs. So before I get into that, I wanted to explain something that I think we all know is true about classroom learning. And so this is not meant to offend anyone. I'm just acknowledging where we are as educators. But typically, classroom problems are presented as these really neat, clean things, right? They're linear. There's a clear start, there's a clear end. And so a teacher moves a student through a sequence of steps to solve a problem. However, typically in those cases, there's not a connection to real life. So, and Skylar talked about this earlier today. A student is left wondering, when am I ever going to use this? How is this relevant? It has no meaning to me as a human being. I'm just doing, I'm not being. But what we know, again, going back to our truth, is that real life is riddled with real problems. And those problems are messy. They're complicated. They're hard to understand. Who knows if they're even solvable? We don't know where they begin. We don't even know sometimes where they end. We just know that problems are messy. And most importantly, every problem out there is connected to real people. So here's what a design brief does. It's seen for us to be a part of the solution to how do we blur those lines between real life and school, but then also how do we bring real world issues, learning opportunities into the classroom? And so, simply put, this is what a design brief is. It's an invitation from us to our partners, many of whom are in the room, by example, to bring their problems for our students to solve. Simple as that. Easiest way I could describe it. And then something magical happens. Students become something way more than just students. They become design consultants, imbued with the ability, the time, the trust to pour wisdom through design thinking, insight, powerful knowledge, research, ideas, prototypes of solutions to problems brought to us by our partners. And what's really amazing about that is that everyone who gets to be a part of it understands how precious that moment is in the work that we undertake together when we give ourselves permission to do so. That is what school can be. And that's what a design brief is, at least in our concept and our minds at the time. So then this awesome opportunity came about. The design brief really came to life in this first opportunity from Centers for Disease Control. So they called, like many folks do, and asked MVIFI to facilitate a design thinking workshop for their new Idea Lab here in Atlanta. And I don't know if y'all know CDC. I mean, they're just a tiny little agency doing a little important work, right? And so here you are, people who, I mean, this is a government organization, yes, housed not far down the road on Emory University's campus, asking us for our insight and wisdom about how to solve their problems. Wow, that's like pretty amazing to me. So, of course, we accepted the invitation, but with one condition, that we could bring our students along. And they were okay with that for the most part, but with their own condition, that if the students were to come, they would simply have to watch and listen. Y'all, I don't know if you know the Vern like I know the Vern. But here's what I'm going to tell you about that. We believe that students should be seen and heard. So that happened. And then this happened. The students were mature, quick learners, and enthusiastic. I can definitely say the students provided insightful contributions that we value as we continue our work to address these important public health challenges. I love that quote. But what I love most about this slide is look at what's happening in this room. You have all these adults now seated at the table, and where are their eyes trained? Upon our student, Megan. And there she is, the expert in the room in that moment, imparting knowledge about how to use design thinking as a way to solve these people-centered problems. It was amazing. And surprisingly, not just for the CDC, it was so great because their reflection back to us was, wow, we so discounted what your students can do, but you didn't. Thank you for bringing us along. They even coined this phrase, rent a student, because they love the whole concept, right? Which ultimately is how I get involved. Spoiler alert. We'll get to that in a moment. But it was so great for us too, because even though we really believe to our toes that kids, our students, all students, are capable of real world work, like really impactful, professional, good stuff, this completely validated that hunch. And to our surprise, maybe, it helped us understand how meaningful and valuable it is to our partners to see the kids in this moment, to glean from their insight and their perspective. But my favorite part of all is really what this meant to Megan and the other students involved, and Anya. They were heard, they were seen, they were respected, and their learning now had a purpose and a meaning. It didn't leave them wondering about what this grade of 87 meant. It wasn't about a grade. It was about solving a problem, making their learning meaningful. So from there, we just kind of went hog wild. And there were lots of other design brief opportunities through which we continue to iterate that whole process, iterate this model and this concept of several things: making school more like real life, bringing real life into the classroom, into learning experiences, providing that interaction between our students as the learner and expert and adults who can impart knowledge as well in that moment. But it also emboldened us in this could really revolutionize our business model as we move through these experiences. And as you see here, I mean, these are no small crowd type folks. There are some really prominent brands here: AT&T Foundry, Moda, City of Sandy Springs here, and all their endeavors that are going on locally. But perhaps my favorite of all, the most meaningful interaction, was with S.J. Collins. You guys probably don't know this company, but they're a commercial developer, and their client at the time was Whole Foods. So they were building all of these Whole Foods developments, and they came to us and said, here's the deal. We desire to have a younger demographic become a part of our customer base. We're building this new Whole Foods over in the Peachtree, Chamblee area. And we really want to challenge our students with helping us think through a community space that would draw in those young families, give them a reason to come, a reason to stay, and ultimately go through our store and become customers. And so the students took it on. And same protocol, design thinking, did lots of discovery, a lot of empathizing, lots of research. And they came back with this concept of a pocket park that young families, by the way, by definition, have young kids. And those kids want to play. And where play happens, community happens. You build relationships, you make connections, you cement relationships, you build trust. And in doing so, those families wander into the store with their kids. They go and shop, you solve your problem. And as part of that, they concepted this idea of, you know what? This used to be an old train depot town, right? So let's pull in that aspect of the identity of fabric of the community and let's call this place Peachtree Station. When I tell you S.J. Collins was beside themselves, I mean soup to nuts, lock, stock, and key to the entire pitch and implemented it. So this is then what happened. There became a living manifestation of all the things we just talked about. That if learning can stretch beyond this neat, clean classroom problem and dare to venture into something much bolder and stickier and messier that's real, well, then what goes in a student's portfolio, part of their college essay and their story to tell about what they did and what they learned becomes about more than a term paper. They can point to a pocket park and say, I did that. Hashtag, I did that. Anya, did you say that, by the way? You should have. So now we're really cooking with gas, right? We're emboldened in this idea because we have a real prototype, a physical one to point to that our students did when challenged with this real world problem. And not only that, but we were really emboldened by the feedback that we received from S.J. Collins. They came back and said, hey, you know what? We pay professional firms all the time to do some of the work that we've asked our students to do. But they have delivered at the same, if not better, quality and caliber of these professional organizations, such that we'd be willing to pay them real money to do this work. Spoiler alert, that's where money merit comes in. But seriously, we thought, well, now we really might be onto something. So the next iteration of that design brief really became more or less a statement of work or invoice, right? In hindsight, at least, to go back and document all of the work that we actually undertook with this particular client, but then do something bold like zero it all out. And now go back to that same client and say, talk to us a bit more about that. What is the real value to the dollar that you would be willing to give, to spend on this experience with the students so that we might go back and hone this idea around how might we monetize the design brief and perhaps create an internal student-led design consultancy? And in doing so, do something that independent schools have dreamt about for many moons, which is how to diversify their revenue, how to move beyond tuition and create a revenue source. But we want to do it in a way that's authentically helpful to our community, but that gives us the power, the ability to reinvest it all back into the students, which is where it all started. And boy, did we get great feedback. They loved the idea, but honestly said, you know what, you've got so many hurdles to jump over and things to think through just because you are a school after all, but we can help you think that through. And I'll tell you my favorite point of feedback that I want to share with you all, because again, the list was long and it was so helpful. We continue to iterate this design on the design brief. But what they shared with us, I think would be meaningful to you, which was, if you don't do anything else, square one where you begin is to share this story. Go and allow yourselves to build awareness with companies, organizations alike about what kids can do. They helped us understand that we weren't wrong. What we know to our toes, what we have subscribed to in our mission, and we hold ourselves to accountable through our continuum, through our amazing faculty and staff, and our incredible students, is in understanding that our students are not these future problem solvers. They are the change makers now. They are the change makers now. They're capable of real world work and quality work at that. And in providing that opportunity, it makes their learning so rich and so meaningful. And my God, if they're doing what Anya and Skylar and Megan and all of our other kids are doing right now, if they do that in the future, we really can design a better world together. And I'm so thrilled to see them get started right here in Mount Vernon. So part of why I tell you this story, especially as educators around the room, but also as parents, I mean, however we can get out of their way, right? unhook ourselves long enough from some of those traditions and preconceived notions and the movie playing in our heads about how we learned and what all that meant for us, we open up tons of possibilities for them and for our collective future. So here's what I want you to know. They are the change makers now. And there's nothing especially special or bold about Mount Vernon. We just chose to make changes to accommodate them in doing what we know they can do. And you can too, but it's going to require something of you as educators. It's going to require you to be bold. It's going to require you to be courageous. Think outside the box. Ask lots of questions. Challenge assumptions. But in doing so, just know you'll be designing a better world. So thank you, Anya, for challenging us, being bold with us, for being our partner, being our inspiration. We love you and appreciate you. And thank you all.